This video will provide an introduction and an overview of RMarkdown for creating dynamic documents in R. By the end of this video, you should understand how extracting output from the R console could negatively impact your workflow. You'll learn what RMarkdown is and how you can use it to communicate results. You'll also learn how to create a basic RMarkdown document using RStudio. So up to this point, we've used R in a very limited way. We've written R commands and scripts in the editor window, we run those commands, and then we look at output in the console. This has really demonstrated the power of R's computing engine, but it's not really useful in the broad sense. Remember that our motivation for data collection and analysis is to make better decisions. Often, the data scientist isn't the decision maker. So how do these analyses actually inform better decisions? What happens is results and our recommendations need to be communicated to decision makers. So far, all the output that we've seen has been in the R console. How do you communicate those results to other people? When you see something interesting, do you say, "Hey, come look at this," and make somebody look at your computer screen? Do you take screenshots or pictures with your phone? Do you just copy and paste the text out of the R console? You've probably realized by this point the R console is a terrible way for communicating results. The output is text only, formatting is difficult, your output is mixed with the computer code that's running in the R console. All in all, this makes a terrible way for communicating information. On top of that, any workflow that relies on extracting output from the R console is difficult to reproduce. What pieces of output do you copy and when? Where do you put it after you copy it? And what happens if some parts of your analysis change? All of these considerations can really impact the reproducibility of your workflow. Remember that most decisions are made many times. So any kind of manual steps, such as manually extracting output, is going to be labor intensive and error prone, and you'd like to avoid manual steps like these if you can in your workflow. So how is it that results are communicated when you have large data science organizations? So what do big companies or government agencies do? For example, when the National Weather Service creates a new weather forecast, what happens? Does somebody read the forecast and then type it into a web page? No. The fact is that the data analysis apparatus often feeds into a system that makes the data presentable and consumable for the general public. You're probably very familiar with dashboards that you might see on websites. Again, these are just interfaces that consolidate data into an easy-to-interpret format. And with all of these dashboards, the goal is to create an interface that provides analyses and data in a way that enhances decision-making. Much of this class is going to focus on written communication in printed documents. Wouldn't it be great if there was a system to create documents with output from R with very little interaction on your part? In fact, there is. In this section of the course, we'll cover that system, which is called RMarkdown. RMarkdown is a system for making professional-looking documents, combining text and R output, including graphics. It can produce output in a variety of formats, including Microsoft Word, PDF, or HTML documents that you might find on websites. RMarkdown is built on RMarkdown files, which have the RMD extension. They can contain R code and text with formatting instructions. When R processes an RMarkdown file, it evaluates the R code and includes the output in the document along with that formatted text. So how are we going to use RMarkdown? Well, importantly, RMarkdown requires that you have the knitr package. That's KNITR. So you should install that package before trying to make an RMarkdown document. So how do you actually create an RMarkdown document? The easiest way to do it is in RStudio, going to the New File menu and selecting RMarkdown. It will give you a dialog box where you have to select some options. And then after that, it will present to you the basic template of an RMarkdown file that you can then convert into a living document. You could also create a text file in Notepad and save it with the RMD extension. The important thing is RMarkdown files have some components that are required for the document to be built, and using the template in RStudio saves you a lot of typing and possibly introducing errors in your document. So again, if you use the RStudio template to create a Markdown file, you'll do that under New File and then RMarkdown. It will ask you to select the output format. Microsoft Word is the easiest to use. If you want to make PDFs, you're going to need to install additional software in your computer. After that, you're going to edit the content of the document. You'll save the RMD file. And then to create the document, you'll press the knit button. What that does is it processes the contents of your Markdown file, evaluates the R code, and then includes the results of that R code, along with the formatted text using the markup instructions that you provided to create a document. It's going to save that output in the same folder as your RMD file. So let's create an RMarkdown document in RStudio. The first thing that you'll do is go to the File menu, look at New File, and then select RMarkdown. R then gives you this dialog box where it asks you to insert some important information. So you might like to enter a title for the document. You might like to enter the author of the document. Lastly, you should select the output format. The best thing to use is Word. That will produce a Microsoft Word document or a docx file. After that, if you press OK, you'll notice in the editor window, a new file has appeared. This is your RMD file. Looking at the contents of this file, there's some text that might be familiar to you. There's also a lot of text that you might not understand. We'll cover what each of these parts mean in the subsequent videos in this section. Before I can actually convert this into a Word document, I first need to save the file. So again, I'll go to File, Save As. I then enter a file name and press Save. This saves the RMD file. Now, if I'd like to create the Microsoft Word document that corresponds to this, I then go to the Knit button, press it, and then it creates a Microsoft Word document processing the content of that file. Now I've opened up this folder on my computer, and you'll notice the folder where I saved the RMarkdown document is where the Microsoft Word document appeared as well. Now just looking through this RMarkdown document in the editor window, there's some familiar text. You can see that's what's converted into text in the document. There's also some codes that you might not be familiar with. The next videos in this module are going to show you what each of these parts mean and how you can construct your own dynamic documents using RMarkdown.